Hello, everyone in the Soil for Climate Facebook group. Big shout out to everyone. Thank you for being in our group and for tuning in to watch the interview with Finian Makepeace, who is the co-founder and policy director of the Kiss the Ground nonprofit organization, which is the organization that produced this landmark film, Kiss the Ground. I can't say enough about that. It just means everything to me. And I definitely want to encourage people to see the movie. It's on Netflix, and I just love it to death. I mean, really, Finian, I got to say, it really touched me. You know, people know what advocacy we do around this issue, and you know, it's inspiring, of course, but you know, it's also very challenging, frankly. And there's a lot of pushback and negativity. Unfortunately, that's the reality. And your movie just cuts through all that and the emotional element of it, and just even like the music. I mean, even just the music itself is just such an important part of it. And you know, a lot of us are kind of nerdy. You know, we get into the science. Well, how many tons can you sequester here or there, and how much rain, and when do you move the animals? And you know, and that's all important. And thank God to all the producers and the people who are working on the land and who are in the scientists who are figuring it out. But you know, there's also just an emotional element, and your movie really captured that emotional element. And I just, you know, really thank God for that. Like, I can rest a little easier. So anyway, let me hand it over to you. Why don't you just talk a little bit about the history? You know, how did this come about? What was your own inspiration, and what are you happy to see? What were some challenges? You know, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Give us the big picture.
Thank you. Well, just to start off, I was a part of contributing to make this movie happen and what it was, but ultimately this was a film created by Josh and Rebecca Tickell and their company, Big Picture Ranch. They've been an amazing partnership for us on this front, but they were really the ones out there, Seth, doing the filming, getting this done. So this was a long journey. This actually took about 7 years to complete and get out to the world on Netflix. So I just want to make sure that they're getting all the credit for what they did. This big lion's share. Kiss the Ground, the nonprofit, has been there the whole time, really helping to connect and to build out the story and to see how this can be kind of a stake in the ground for the movement to utilize to propel this forward. But yeah, the film is created by those folks, Josh and Rebecca Tickell and Big Picture Ranch team, and we've all helped produce it, to say the least. So the journey was long. The connection with Josh and Rebecca around the film started about a year after we, myself and Rylan and a few of the other original founders of Kiss the Ground, really saw this opportunity. So we connected with them. John Rulak was also initial inspiration behind the film. He had been, you know, getting Josh and Rebecca excited simultaneously about, you know, making a movie about dirt, which they thought was kind of crazy. But through, you know, Ryland's persistence and John Rulak, and then a couple of meetings, they came down to the original Kiss the Ground office and talked with us. And I kind of laid out the science side of it, of like, this is huge. The potential here is really enormous. So it was a combined effort to really get it going, because initially for them, it was like making a documentary about dirt essentially didn't make sense to them until they kind of got that moment. And then of course, all things went from there. But the process was long, because making a film like this that represents the folks who are doing the work and having the science argument land with people who don't understand it or hadn't heard about it before, it's a lot of work, and there was a lot of renditions of the film. It was a slugfest for a while, and we finally really emerged with something that we felt like represented at least a certain aspect of this movement, which for us was where we kind of got into the movement from. And obviously there's missings there. This is a part, Seth, as we say, of the regenerative agriculture story. This is not the regenerative agriculture story. There's a lot that this film does leave out, because there's only so much that we covered in those original interviews and in that beginning of the process of making this film multiple years ago. So there's always those moments of like, yeah, it could have been this, could have added this, but it is what it is. And we think it's an amazing tool for the movement. And just a quick backstory for Kiss the Ground. We got started in this movement, not because we were ranchers or farmers or people in ag school or studying science, was that we basically heard this idea of regenerative agriculture and building soil can be this really big solution. And I didn't know. I was a very activist-oriented, science-oriented person. And the fact that I didn't know about this was too big for me to just let it go. So it was really a right then and there moment for me personally. When I heard this 4-hour lecture from Graham Sate, it was going back that same night, shaking Ryland's hand, the other co-founder, Kiss the Ground, saying, if this is all true, we have to dedicate our lives to spreading this awareness, because by gosh, this is the really biggest fundamental shift that can happen for humanity to change our trajectory and really face the crises that we've created, whether it's too much carbon, whether it's desertification, whether it's water security, food security, et cetera. So that was it for me. And I didn't think I was going to be this involved. I thought I would start an organization that helped and then kind of continue with my life. But you know how that goes. This sucks you all the way in. So that's a little bit of my story.
Finian, thank you for sharing that. So give me a little bit of a timeline there. Like when was that lecture that you saw that changed your worldview, so to speak, and what specifically was the little sort of nugget that really got to you?
Great question. That was about a little over 8 years ago. And Ryland, the other co-founder, had seen Graham Sate, who everyone should look up. He's an amazing person in this movement. He had been watching a panel of scientists talk about at this event in New Zealand, can human beings sustain themselves on planet Earth? And the first 5 people on the panel said, basically, no, we're heading off a cliff very quickly. And the last guy, Graham Sate, said, yes, what they said is true, and we've all forgotten this big potential called soil and how fast we can build it back if we're working with nature and animals to do it. So Ryland came back really excited, being someone who was in the restaurant business, organic food, vegan stuff. It was like, oh my God, I had no idea about this big solution. He knew me in my activist world as a touring musician. He was like, well, Finn, you got to hear this. So he invited me to make sure I was there. So Graham Sate is a prolific knowledge holder in this movement. I mean, the guy just knows so much of the technical science. And I happen to have studied or done a study with Cornell University when I was in 12th grade of high school that was actually doing some of the first experiments showing that oak groves were protecting themselves from airborne viruses via mycorrhizal fungi sending messages. I think it was over a few miles away from each other, but via the underground network, they were showing that mycorrhizal fungi was how these trees were communicating with each other to create antidotes for these airborne viruses. So that was amazing. So when Graham was talking, there were these clicks, Seth. You know, I had a pretty amazing background in biology for someone who didn't study that much, and I did political science in college, but I had an amazing, growing up in Ithaca, New York with Cornell University, I got to go pretty in depth in soil and biology. So when Graham was talking, I feel like I was in the audience just having the jaw drop moments of connections of, oh my God, I had no idea that this all existed. So it was life-changing. Like that, it was one of those things where enough things clicked. There are many particular ones, but it wasn't just one, it was multiple clicks that happened during that conversation or a presentation by Graham that made it abundantly clear to me that unless he was pulling our leg, this is huge.
All right, well, let's hear it for Graham. The nice, wonderful shout outs to him, and great history you got there. Thank you. You know, for me, it was obviously Alan Savory was a big part of it, but it even predates that. And you know, just quickly from our point of view, you know, That's why we call our organization Soil for Climate. Like, you just can't get more basic than that. And I love, by the way, the origin of the name Kiss the Ground itself. It's from a Rumi quote. Can you just say something real quick about that?
Yeah, it's Rylan is a big Rumi fan, but in essence, we were trying to find who we were and where our intentions for our part of this movement. And that Rumi quote, when Ryland found it, there's hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. And I encourage everyone to read the whole poem. It's one of the best poems I think ever written, if you read that whole poem where that's from. But that really was profound for us because there's poetry and art inside of this. And we come from that side a bit more than the technical science side. But when we grasp what little we know and what more there is to know, and what indigenous cultures have been revering, and that many Western cultures have forgotten about, or especially the colonizing powers have forgotten about, of just the amount of time we've spent looking up at the stars and quote unquote heaven, and forgotten about this amazing aspect called soil and what's happening, and revering it and having this reverence. So that was a bit about, like, what level of humble are we willing to go to recognize that there's something beneath our feet that is more than worth kissing. And that's really where it all just landed. It was we were struggling with name for a long time, and some silly ones came up. But when we had that moment, it was within a day that everyone was like, yeah, that's the name.
Yeah, well, it just reinforced it for me, because I was, a fan of Kiss the Ground for, 5 years or so, since 2015. And then I discovered after the fact the origin of the quote, that it was from a Rumi poem. And I was like, oh, perfect. And then when I saw the actual line in the poem, I was like, oh, all right, that makes it even that much better. All right, so what I want to do now is actually show the trailer, and then we'll just start taking questions through the Facebook comment area. Okay, so just bear with me for a second. The whole screen sharing thing is always a challenge, but hopefully I'll get this to work pretty quick.
There's so much bad news about our planet. It's overwhelming. The truth is, I've given up. This is the story of a simple solution, a way to heal our planet. The solution's right under our feet, and it's as old as dirt.
All of our soils that are under chemical conventional agriculture are almost completely devoid of microorganisms.
Modern agriculture
Oh my God,
not designed.
Rebecca's texting me right now.
Fossil fuels are by no means the only thing that is causing climate change. When we damage soils, carbon goes back to the atmosphere. When we destroy soil, it releases carbon dioxide.
Biosequestration is using plants, trees, and techniques of grazing and farming to capture carbon and store it in the soil.
We can fix a lot of our climate issues to bring the CO2 down into a living plant and put it back into the soil where it belongs.
Plants working with soil microorganisms, it seems too simple.
Healthy soils lead to a healthy plant, healthy human, healthy climate.
There could be a way to eat food that heals the planet.
The problem isn't the animal. The problem is where the animals are at.
How do we take waste and repurpose and reuse it, because it's really not waste?
The poop has to stay in the loop.
Compost is just one of a suite of soil-based carbon capture solutions.
We know how to do it. And if we continue to scale it over 30 years, we can reverse global warming.
We can get the Earth back to the Garden of Eden that it once was by regeneration.
To see biodiversity return to a place that was completely devastated,
that gives me hope.
Our health and the health of our planet are connected.
If you look over here, my neighbor's land that has been chemical fallow, then you look over at our paddocks, you have a diversity of different plant species. Which model do you want your food to be produced from? The answer is pretty simple to me.
I'll make you a deal. I won't give up, and neither should you.
Yay! Oh, hang on.
Agriculture industry has suffered
hang
a
on.
1.8.
Okay. I still had it playing in the background.
That's another great one people should watch. A Regenerative Secret. Yeah.
Right. Then on YouTube, that's the next one that comes up. So hooray. And what a great trailer. Even the trailer itself is just awesome. Well, you guys did such a good job on that. You know, I want to talk more about even the making of it, like the music, and then I know I want to take questions just say something real quick about the musical selection. Like what was that like? Like even that piece that's playing at the end is awesome. What piece is that, and where did that come from?
Do you want the trailer or for the actual film?
Well, in the trailer just now, yeah.
I don't know that. That sounds like a song I've heard before, but I wasn't the one doing them. There's a person who did all the music for everything. I forget their name, which is sad, but in terms of the movie, some of the big pieces, our friend Jason Mraz is a big part of this movement with us and has been for years now. And he volunteered his music, so that was huge for the ending 2 songs of the film.
Yeah, music really is important. We've created a concept we call a Yevo Fest, and a Yevo Fest is a gathering to talk about soil as a climate solution that has both science and the arts. So there you go. Let's hear it for the arts part of this. Okay, so in the comments area. Oh, okay, yep. In the comments area, someone was saying that they want to see this in all.
Oh, we got Rebecca. She joined us.
Hi.
Oh, Rebecca. Yes.
We just watched the preview, Rebecca. So thanks for joining.
Oh, I'm so happy I could be here. So happy to have this conversation with you two. What an honor to be a part of this conversation with you. Woohoo.
Rebecca, high fives all around. Thank you for joining. Thank you so much. And I'm here with my colleague Karl too. And I don't know if you heard the first part, but we were just saying just how much we love the film because it really hits at an emotional level. And there are people, you know, like me and my colleague Karl who've been, you know, eyeball deep in the science literally for a decade. You know, how many tons of carbon here, how much rain, how many animals, you know, just literally arguing over these nuances. And you guys just cut right to the emotional chase, and you made an uplifting movie. And honestly, I mean, it's changed my life, frankly. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. And it was a real team that came together to make it happen. And we couldn't have done it without pioneers out there arguing over the details, because, you know, having the science in the film was such a critical element for us to be able to tell the story. And watching the movement coalesce over the last decade, really, you know, the science has been sort of the missing link. You know, it's like people don't really want to have a conversation unless they know that they're talking about stats and facts and science. And this is sort of, we're emerging at kind of like the tip of the iceberg of what's opening up around regeneration just now. You know, we needed every little bit of data and science that we could get our hands on to be able to finally get a message that everyone could agree on, that had science that everyone could agree on, because that's the most important part of it all, is to be able to fully understand the complexity and simplicity at the same time of what it is that we're talking about. So thank you for your years of work on this.
Yeah, well, thank you, because you've made it worth it, frankly. You know, if all I got out of this was a stack of, you know, journal articles, I would have felt a little let down. So you guys have given it an element that it needed. Thank you. Now, you know, I do want to take acknowledge the comments that are coming into the Facebook group. And one of them was about education. It said, we need to get this into the schools. And Finian, I guess this is in your field here as the education director, what is happening in terms of education, and particularly, let's say, at the school level, at the classroom level, you know, high school, middle school, that kind of thing?
Actually, sorry, I am the policy director, and Rebecca actually might be able to explain more, but we have an amazing, how many people, Rebecca, can you just jump in? How many requests have we gotten from the education cut? We're making a shorter cut, Seth, of the film right now, finishing it up. That's 45 minutes, so it can fit into a period at school. So Rebecca, tell them about how many requests we've already gotten.
Oh, I mean, I don't even know what the number is. What is the number? I know it was like hundreds have come in.
It's over 1,000 now. We have yeah, thousands of schools now. So
well, basically, you know, one of the things that we're doing, it's hard to keep track because like we've had so many requests for screenings, and those are happening all around the world, and we're having tons of requests because if word is getting out that we have this free education cut of the film, and it sort of dives into the issues that young people are really interested in. And then we have a farmer cut that dives into more of the economics and benefits of transitioning to regeneration. But the education cut is free. And so I guess, yeah, we're thousands. We have somebody, Rocco, who's helping us get this out free to schools around the world, across America. We are going to have it online. Teachers will be able to use it for remote learning. So it's a very exciting moment for the film to finally get in front of a group of people who are more concerned about this issue, I think, than anyone, because it really is their future that we're talking about. And so it's free. So we have a 45-minute version. It really does dive into climate change. You know, this young generation is feeling disenfranchised and feeling like the adults have screwed them. Sorry for the choice of words, but I think that they're feeling like adults have really let them down and don't have it together, and we need to get our butts together when it comes to climate change, and that we've basically been failing to do that. And so they're not going to go to school until we figure it out. Well, guess what? The education cut is a way that we can all go to school and get the tools and the language and a vision for how we can have young people be excited about their future and how young people can get involved and be the leaders of this regenerative movement.
Yeah, and on top of that, Seth, we have a middle school curriculum that goes into the standards for what people are learning, usually 6th or 7th grade, around photosynthesis and everything. So Kiss the Ground has a curriculum called Soil Story Curriculum that was designed with another company a couple years ago that also can pair with the film. So people can do a week-long curriculum that meets the science standards for the US, integrate that. We also have an Australian version and for Mexico, another version as well. So that's available at kisstheground.com. And then on top of that, we partnered with Captain Planet to make something called the Soil Quest, which is for even slightly younger folks to really get involved with this movement. So the education cut's really going to be this intro where people are gaining the inspirational factor of it, and then being able to jump into some of these other things like the Soil Story Curriculum or the Soil Quest. And those are both at kisstheground.com.
Excellent. Well, listen, if you ever want to sort of test run those things through the Soulful Climate Facebook group, you know, feel free to use us as a resource in that regard.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime.
Yeah.
Also, you know, something that I wanted to say about the science element and the emotional element and just the sort of the narrative is we get into these debates again. Unfortunately, we talked about this a little bit, Rebecca, before you came on, and like one of the debates is, well, how much carbon can we sequester? And I'm almost like, what difference does it make? You know, let's just start doing it. I mean, you know, the true scientists would say, well, it'll be fun to find out, right? And I personally, I don't think we have the slightest idea. You know, we're just like, I think just on the very edge of what's possible.
Yeah.
And at the very least, you could say, well, you ought to be able to sequester what you've lost. And the assumption is, you know, since the beginning of agriculture, we're talking about hundreds of billions of tons, you know, maybe 1,000 billion tons, of 1 trillion tons of carbon have been lost since the beginning of agriculture. So, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, whether it's 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 tons per acre per year or decade. Let's just start doing it. And and what I love about your film, getting back to your film, is just like the graphics you have of the, you know, the little carbon molecules going down and then the water going up in the trees. It's all just this delightful embracing of natural processes. And that's what it's about, just getting into the natural processes. And let's find out, you know, let's surprise ourselves. Let's see how much carbon we can sequester. Let's see how much local cooling effect we can have. So again, just sort of hooray for that.
I would throw something that I think we're all excited about in the movie and in the organization is right along with what you're saying, Seth, is right now the potential on regenerating land is so massive. So if we take my state I live in now, California, and the rate we're losing topsoil right now is 3.6 tons of topsoil per acre per year on all of our ag land. That's our average. The US average is 4 tons. So just thinking about moving ourselves from degenerative, not trying to sustain how degraded it already is, but regenerating landscapes so they function again is really a much more relevant question right now, or relevant purpose right now in California, than how much technical carbon can we sequester. Be like, look, we're oxidizing, burning technically with fires, and bleeding with runoff and erosion carbon off our land. So we have to fix the broken so it functions again. And then the carbon building happens because that's the actual stuff we need to rebuild the land. The carbon from the atmosphere is what makes the soil function again. So it's kind of like so many people are trying to put the cart before the horse, where it's like, give me the numbers of how much you can sequester carbon, and be like, our land has to work again, and it has to be hydrated again. It has to have biodiversity again. It has to have biomass to be able to go again. It has to not turn brittle for 3 months more of the year. We can do this. We've seen ranches that don't get burned by fire because they hydrated their landscape through regenerative grazing. So these are the kind of things that we need to look at, especially in the areas of the world where it's desertified, where it's burning, where it's dehydrated, where things are broken because those climates are more brittle or have less rainfall. We need to be able to say, how are we maximizing these landscapes to regenerate? How are we helping that? And that's what we're really looking at. What's happening in California, for example, is we're starting to have that interpretation and mindset shift occur. And it's really exciting.
Yeah, and one thing I want to add to both of your points is, you know, we really, like I said, we need the science, and that's important. Let me find a little bit of shade here. But it's easy to get lost in the Roundup resistant weeds, so to speak, and not end up doing anything. And I think that's where we've kind of been stuck for the last decade, as we've been talking about climate, is lost in the Roundup resistant weeds. We've failed to, you know, we can argue over the percentages and the numbers, but overall, we can all agree that regeneration works. Drawdown works. You can store carbon. We have a carbon misplacement problem right now. We need a place to store it. And as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter how many gigatons we can store, and I'm certain it's that. I know that Mother Earth has the capacity to help us fix this problem. We just have to be willing to take the steps to do it, and to be willing to embrace a pathway to it. And it's not about getting lost in the differences, but really finding the common ground where we can all agree, which is what's so unique about regeneration, because it brings so many diverse people together. It brings, you know, Midwestern farmers like my dad, who have a very different political view than mine. You know, and, you know, small farmers like us who have this little, you know, regenerative avocado farm that we're working on regenerating, and just people from all walks of life, because we all have this in common. And, you know, this is the food and agriculture is the thread that really unites us. And I think, like you're talking about regeneration or degeneration, You know, it's easy to get lost in the numbers, but if you look at the big picture, since the dawn of time, we have documented our habit of going into these beautiful, lush landscapes, over extracting, overpopulating, depleting the resources, drought, famine, war. And that's been happening, you know, to civilization since the dawn of our recorded history. And so now we're doing it on a global scale. And are we really going to waste our time, our precious minutes that we all really need to be focusing on what are the solutions, and waste it on arguing over the facts? We didn't do that when it came to COVID. I mean, I guess we did, but look at what we've done in a year. Look at what we've done this year, how we've adapted to this situation, how quickly we can adapt. That's good news for us, that we can adapt that quickly, because it's time to do that and embrace regeneration.
Rebecca, thank you so much for those wonderful thoughts. And you know what? I want you just to keep talking, because I love the tree and where you are. You know, it's just so beautiful there. I mean, the rest of us are inside, and you took your laptop or your cell phone and went outside, whatever.
Oh, you guys want to see something cool? Here, you guys talk for a minute, and I'm going to run down to the barn and show you where Kiss the Ground was made. It was literally made in a barn, in an avocado barn. So,
all right. Well, we'll come.
Probably some of my staff are going to be down there. Hopefully there's a mask there for me.
Okay, well, good for you. We'll come back to that in a minute. You know, my virtual background that I use in my Zoom calls, like that's me. Now, Finian, this shot was in the movie. You had a shot in the movie when Ian Somerhalder went to visit Alan. This was one of the scenes that we call it movie. We call this the two tree spot, because of those sort of two trees in the middle of it. And that's me there in the picture next to it. And so, you know, I've seen this myself. You know, what I like to say is I've stood in the efficacy. That's my phrase. I've stood in the efficacy. And
you may recognize these avocado trees from the John Liu interview in the movie. This is where he was roaming around. Sorry to interrupt, Seth. Keep going.
No, that's okay. We love John Liu, and it was wonderful to see that sequence. Oh God, this is fun. Karl, do you have a question you want to ask now?
Sure. First, following up on this, the thought of beauty as we're discussing how beautiful nature is. Absolutely love the scene in the movie with Donica Markegard showing her daughter what healthy soil looks like. I found that very moving. And also, surprise, I had tears in my eyes when Gabe Brown showed the differences between the industrial field and the regenerative pastures behind him. Found it a very moving moment. My question would be, when the movie is shown to audiences that are not just soil advocates, but more to the lay public, I'm wondering what the feedback has been for what lands best with them. Like, what do you find the most effective messages that come across, or what really resonates with the audience? Are there certain scenes that kind of stand out in that regard?
You want to go, Finian, or you want me to say my?
You go. I know you have something to say.
Hands down, I think. I mean, of course, the market guards are so beautiful, but I really think it's the Ray Archuleta scene that actually Sean here cut. This was like, Sean is the editor that cut this scene in the giving the lecture, and you see how tilling emits carbon, and how when the plants grow, it draws down carbon. That whole section, this guy kept together, Sean Keenan. Yes,
good to see you, Sean.
And this is the barn. This was once an avocado warehouse where they used to process the avocados, the monocrop here at the farm before we came in. It took us like 5 years to like get good weeds, I'd say. So we added in here. Is Jason in there? Oh, hey, is it okay if I just poke my head in? Here's Jason. He mixed the sound for the movie.
We were talking about that earlier, was the music.
This is where he mixed it. This is the sound mixing room here.
Cool.
And then, where voiceover is recorded. There's the man, the legend himself. And then in here, lastly but not least for our tour, is, if I can get the lights on, Oh, well, you're not gonna get, it's the room, it's the online room where Josh and I direct the final things. Oh, and then what are you cutting right now, Sean?
This is the education cut.
So he's so we were just talking about the education cut and how great it's gonna be.
Oh, good, okay.
All right, well.
We hope.
Good luck with that. Actually, do you guys want to see a sneak peek? Do you want to show them that Rosario bit? I don't even know, was that bit in the, was that bit even in the feature? Here's a tiny little sneak peek. Can you guys see, okay?
Go for it.
What are things that you're doing in your life to make an impact around climate change?
I mean, I like to, do my part when I can, like with my metal straw.
Going to the paper straws.
No plastic straws, paper straws versus plastic. Recycled straws. Every time I come here, I feel energized.
If recycling and paper straws are our only hope, we are in really big trouble.
Thanks for that. Yes.
I would say, Karl, thank you, Rebecca. I would say, Karl, the answer to that question for me so far has been Gabe Brown sequence. So many people that I'm talking to internationally, we just had an amazing thing. I was talking with Tomcat Ranch, this guy named Kevin, and he's working with a group I'm going to mess it up. I'm going to mess up the country name because I can't remember exactly what it was. Anyway, this country in Eastern Europe is looking at how are we going to start having cows? How are we going to start exporting? And they looking at CAFO systems to adopt for their entire country, really. And they ended up watching the film Kiss the Ground. And this guy Kevin's been trying to get them to go regenerative. And they watched the film and they're like, oh, we want to be like Gabe Brown. So we just moved, looking like an entire government moved by the film to go regenerative versus go CAFO with export potential for their beef industry. So
wonderful,
huge things like that I think are really cool to hear about. But for us, overwhelmingly, it's been the Gabe Brown sequence that people are saying that really touched me to know that this can happen at scale.
Terrific.
I want to say, I was there also. I was with Gabe Brown a couple of years ago, standing at that exact spot, and it's just so profound. And it's the same thing with Alan Savory in Zimbabwe. The Victoria Falls National Park. This is a major tourist destination. People come from all over the world to see the waterfall, which is, the waterfall is amazing. But the land right next to it is desertified. And it's a national park, right? And then you drive literally 20 kilometers down to Alan Savory's property, and the grass is as tall as a person. And it's profound. Okay, so yeah, and again, it's that visceral experience. I want to be able to take questions through the Facebook comments. I'm having a technical problem reading them. For some reason, it's only showing me a few at a time. So Finian or Karl, if you're seeing some comments through Facebook that you want to.
For some reason, I'm only seeing one as well. I see there's 40 comments, but all we see is Jessica Villett. Well, I guess we'll answer her thing about the economy. Do you think that regenerative ag needs to be part of the current economic, or conversely, does the current economy need to mold itself to the regenerative model, or neither? I would say really both. And one of the things that I would say on that is we have one of our strongest arguments in regenerative agriculture is the economics that are really, really viable. And if we start with inside the system we're in, farmers are going currently in the US into 4% average debt increase in their agriculture every year. So when we look at shifting that, the big shift often is input cost reductions. He just disappeared into the field there. we're watching behind the scenes, you guys can't see, but input cost reductions needs to be, for all of us out there advocating for this, needs to be front and center as a way that we're saying, look, if we're talking about farmers, the people doing this work being prosperous, we have to take seriously the margins that they're working inside of. And currently they're on a 4% average increase of debt every year. So when we look at when people go through Soil Health Academies, two of the stars of the film, Ray and Gabe's courses, for example, we're seeing, especially East Coast, we're seeing input cost reductions, saving people $50, $100, $200,000 in their first couple years.
Process.
So these are the things that we have to say, wait a minute, when we're just talking about economics, it's not just about higher yield. It's not just about matching yield. It's about input cost reductions. Farmers are putting so much money into their inputs because their land is so degraded, because they're dependent on these chemicals. Moving over to regenerative versus moving over to organic, for example, can be this way that they're taking themselves off of massive input costs. So this is, I think, one of the most profound arguments that all of us need to be equipped to make inside the current economic model. And then outside the current economic model is looking at things like crop insurance, how that's formed in the Farm Bill, looking at things like loans, how those are able to be modified so farmers actually have real good loan programs that are helping them regenerate their land or move towards it. So those are the two things I want to mention. Is the things we have to change is crop insurance and the way the commodity structures are put into place for subsidies, and then how loans are happening. But in the now present moment, converting to regenerative agriculture to reduce input costs massively is a big starting point.
And what better crop insurance is there than biodiversity, right?
That's where we're moving towards, is how are we having crop insurance tied to how resilient your farm is? Just like good drivers for State Farm, you know, regenerative farmers do make their farms more resilient. Therefore, their premiums should be lower. And that's what we're focusing on with other groups like Landcorps and others out there.
Thank you. Karl, I think you have a question from Facebook.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions I can share. One is by Matt Holton, who asks, have you been able to get any government or institutional support and funding?
Yes, I have to leave. This is the last thing I'm going to say. Amazing news out of California this week. We'll be announcing very soon, but multiple orders of new funding coming in from the state of California, just told to us via backdoor by the governor. So this is really exciting momentum happening in California. More updates to come. Unfortunately, I'm going to leave it to Rebecca for questions, but on the policy front, state by state right now, but then federally, we'll be moving there as well. But go to soilpolicyaction.us to check out what's happening on the state by state. I know that Seth and Karl have been involved with that as well, but that is formally and still currently Nerds for Earth, but it's now a more forward-facing site that's interactive. So go to soilpolicyaction.us to check out where policy is happening and how you can get involved. I have to go. Thank you all so much. Appreciate your time. Rebecca will be taking the rest of the questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Finian.
Thank you, Finian. Thank you so much.
All right, another question that came in is from Michael Lerner, who asks, are you working on Kiss the Ground Part 2?
Is this Michael, the Michael Lerner from Texas? Let's see. I might have a plant out there. Let's see. Is there? Hi, if that's you. The plan is to take the 400 hours of footage that we didn't end up using, that we cut incredible sequences from, that didn't end up in the movie, and all ended up on the cutting room floor, stuff that we deeply love, including this whole section on buffalo and the Nakota, and sort of the indigenous wisdom that is handed down, that regeneration is based on, and just some incredible stuff with NASA and NOAA. We went to the Mauna Loa Observatory, really good stuff that we are putting into 6 episodes, 45 minutes long, and we will make free for schools as well. So it'll be the Kiss the Ground series, TV series, that will go deep into each of the subjects that we explore in the film and we'll make it free for remote learning for kids, and it will be great for adults too. I think we all can learn something around these issues.
Okay, and another question, what role can non-farmers play in policy advocacy?
In policy advocacy, well, I can speak from my own experience, which is, by the way, this is, I know that this looks like a regular green grass, but this is actually clover and 17 different types of California grass. So what we can each do for policy, I can speak to from the perspective of the mom here in Ventura County in California, where we have the highest spraying of pesticides per person and per acre in the state of California. And we've been actively involved in getting some of these policies and funding in place to help with the transition, because here we have, we're an agricultural county, and it's also a residential county. And so we have a lot of mixing of spraying chemicals and children playing in schools. And so it's been, something that we've been literally dealing with in our backyard. And we had to start, I've got a group of moms and concerned citizens together, and we went to the city council, and we went to the ag commissioner, and we went to the county, we went to our representatives, and then we ended up at the California EPA, California pesticide reform. We just went up the ladder to the top until someone actually watched Kiss the Ground, and then some people watched Kiss the Ground, and sort of out of a result of all of these actions together, resulted in a real commitment from California government to change our policy to be policies based on biosequestration. And that's what our economy needs to be based on biosequestration. Our policies need to be based on biosequestration. So what we can do is we can buy products from companies that support biosequestration, and we can elect politicians that support policies around biosequestration. And you have to have a commitment to the environment to really to do that. But I really do think that that's something that we all share. I think we all care for the land that we are the stewards of here in America. It's one of the things that we're most proud of. So I really think that we can unite around this, and especially around policy and politics. It's easy to get stuck, but this is something that I really do think that everyone wins when we start talking about what we have in common and what the combined objective is, which ultimately is regeneration.
Excellent. Following up on your comment on reducing pesticide use around schools, I'd like to give a shout out to our friend Mackenzie Feldman, founder of the Pesticide Free Campuses movement, who's done a great job at reducing pesticide and herbicide use on college campuses.
Great job. It's going to take every one of us to educate lovingly everyone that we know. I mean, the movement happens in, when we all start having these conversations on local levels, on policy levels, and when we're talking to the people that we're buying our food from, and when we're talking to the people that we're electing about biosequestration and educating them about that begins the pathway and the dialogue towards actually having these policies and having products that are supporting biosequestration. It's a carbon economy. That's what we want, is the carbon economy. I'm sorry, what was the question?
I just had a comment also that one of the many benefits of regenerative agriculture is a reduction in the use of herbicides and pesticides. And this is a point that John Kemp from Advancing Eco-Agriculture has pointed out, that when soil becomes healthy, plants become healthy. And if the plants are healthy, they can become resistant and in some cases completely immune to insects and diseases and so forth. So that's a great spin-off that people don't understand, that just making different management changes can result in all types of ecosystem performance improvements. I think that's about all the questions I have here. But Seth, do you have any?
Okay, well, I'm never at a shortage of things to say. One of the insights or breakthroughs, so to speak, that has come through the discussions in the Soil for Climate Facebook group is around it's exactly this issue, like how do you measure regeneration? What does that actually mean? And in the carbon world, there's been all this talk, as you know, about, carbon, measuring soil carbon, and then what price do you have on soil carbon? And, you know, that's problematic just because of the difficulty of doing it. You know, well, where do you sample and how often and how deep? And then, you know, and then what if it's, you know, does it change naturally? I mean, if there's a drought or versus tilling. And I've just been trying to think of just a simpler way of doing this. And it could literally be just the temperature of the land itself. And that can be measured from space. And it can be measured all the time, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. NASA's doing it anyway. You know, they're constantly just doing infrared profiles. And I'm not sure what granularity you can get to, but you see, getting back to Gabe Brown's property, without going there to take a single core sample, you know, without even taking a single core sample, you'll be able to see from space that his property is better, literally because of the temperature. It will be warmer at night and cooler during the day. The properties around it will be going through those extremes, just like Alan Savory said. They'll be getting hotter during the day and cooler at night. And Brown's property will be maintaining more of a steady temperature. And this idea of just literally measuring the regeneration by the infrared profile of the land itself from space is something I think could be sort of like a breakthrough. So I don't know, do you have anyone want to comment on that?
You know, we actually had a whole sequence of the movie that we wanted to do just with infrared to show how different cities are from countryside and how the temperature, you know, when you have a condensed population increases, and I don't remember what the exact numbers are, but it's like as you increase by 100,000, the temperature goes up by a certain amount. So I think that's a brilliant idea, Seth, that you should definitely, I think you should keep doing what you're doing. I think that the regenerative movement needs you. That's what I think. And I think I'm grateful that you're the one doing it. You know, and I wanted to add one more thing to what you were saying, Karl, about resiliency and immunity, which is something that we're all so deeply concerned about right now. And that is just here in Ojai, we're dealing with the Asian citrus psyllid, which is a bug that's wreaking havoc in citrus growing regions all around the world. It's been around for 100 years, this bug, but because of the increase in the use of toxic synthetic pesticides and herbicides, the bug is really sort of winning the war in a monocrop environment that's sort of denuded of life. And what they've learned is that the bug goes after trees that are sick and weak and dying. And so if these trees had biodiversity built in and they had you know, healthy soil, and they would be able to survive. The healthy trees would survive. And that is just, and so we've been here in the valley saying, like, we really need biodiversity in the valley, not just citrus, because that's how we can prevent huge fires like the Thomas fire that we just had that almost wiped us out. And so clearly regeneration is something that any area that's dealing with drought and fire needs to seriously explore, because the myth that these monocrop farms are like a buffer for fire is the complete opposite of the truth, when in fact the buffer for fire is having water, a healthy small water cycle, and, you know, healthy soil that has water built in, and trees that have access to water, and, you know, an aquifer, and all those things that get created and jump started when you integrate regenerative practices, which starts with reducing and eliminating the use of these toxic synthetic chemicals. And so I just wanted to say, from my own two eyes, I've seen the power of when we eliminate chemicals and we start these regenerative practices, not just with our own bodies, but also with the way that we grow food, we can have resiliency and immunity to these things. And it really is, like Finian said earlier, it's two different paths. It's the path of regeneration, or it's the path of degeneration. And we just have to look at what the future down both of those roads really looks like, and then make an educated choice, which we can do thanks to you and the wonderful work that you've been doing.
No, Rebecca, it's all you.
Well, we're all in it together, right? We're all in it together.
All right. Well, listen, we
can do this. We can. I know I'm excited for what's possible for all of us. I mean, abundance is what's possible through regeneration, ridiculous abundance that you can't even measure. It's exponent. You can't even measure it. It's so much.
Right.
And I'm seeing it right here in our own little farm, as our soil is building exponentially as we implement these practices. So I know that if we can do it here, we can do it anywhere.
Well, Rebecca, just really quickly, we had asked Finian this question before you came on, but I was talking about his role in the movie, and he really deferred to you. He said, well, it's really, Rebecca and Josh. But anyway, what I had asked him what his inspiration was, how he got started on this. Why don't you just quickly tell us, from your point of view, where did the idea for the Kiss the Ground movie come from?
Well, I'm Rumi. I don't know. Native American people. I mean, I think honestly, like, it's so intuitive to this is such a part of. I just tapped into the collective conscious, I guess you could say, or we did, of what we wanted to make. We said we wanted to make a movie that healed the world, and so this is the subject that came to us in the form of Finian, and a very, very unexpected and long and detailed conversation about regeneration, which I had no clue about. And that was in the garage where Josh and I had made fuel. Josh and I saw Josh driving the veggie van across the country back in the 90s, and I was so inspired by what he was doing. And that was kind of a form of regeneration, using a waste stream, used cooking oil, making biodiesel from that. And he was part of jumpstarting that movement. And I loved that so much. And I had a background in the entertainment industry. So when I found him out here in Hollywood, roaming around in the veggie van, we both had this real desire to make movies that transformed and healed the world. And he showed me some clips from Fuel. And I just remembered that I was so clear that that's what my life was about. And so that was 13 years ago, 14 films ago. And, I think when we moved to Ojai, and then the Kiss the Ground nonprofit moved into our place where we had made our films in Venice. And then he started sort of hammering us about making a movie about soil. And we had just finished making 4 movies about oil. And we were like, oh no, this is horrible. How are we going to make this entertaining? I mean, it's as boring as dirt because it's dirt. It wasn't exactly what we had in mind when we were thinking of like an earth-shaking blockbuster, but Ryland and Finian were very persuasive, and what they said really got to us. And it became clear that all of the work that we had done, all of those miles that we had driven in the veggie van, all of the things that we had ever done had led us to this. And truly, we feel like the last 7 years of Kiss the Ground has been, our calling in this world. And I feel like so many people feel that way too. So it's not just us. It's not just Josh or I. I mean, like, truly, it took hundreds of people to make the Kiss the Ground movie. And I really feel like it really came, even Jedi and his sister Athena were both born inside of the conversation of Kiss the Ground and regeneration. We had 2 children, Josh and I, after being together for a while, because we finally had faith that there was going to be a bright future that children could live in once we understood the concept of drawdown. So I mean, I think it changed our life on every level, and everything that we've done has truly led us to this. And we're just so happy to be a part of this movement and to be of service. We truly are committed to being of service in this movement and to living it ourselves in our life.
Yeah. Well, Rebecca, we have nothing to add to that. I mean, the picture of you there with your son, and that's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Let me wave. What was your son's name?
What's your name? This is Jedi.
Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jedi. That's a perfect name. Love you, Jedi. You're the future right there.
Aww. Well, we love you too.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. You give us hope for the future for sure. Karl, you have any last words you want to add?
No, I'll just echo Seth's gratitude. Thank you so much for your efforts. I guess I will mention in closing, years ago, I visited the Real Goods store in Ukiah, California. And coincidentally, there were some barrels of fuel, and I looked at the label, and it was for Woody Harrelson. So it was nice to see his work.
Yeah, that's how we came to Woody, was actually through biodiesel. He got his hands on a copy of From the Fire to the Fuel Tank, which was the book that Josh had written that taught people how to make biodiesel from used cooking oil, or to convert their cars to run on straight vegetable oil. And that got into Woody's hands, and Willie Nelson and Neil Young, and they all started getting into biodiesel. And then, you know, it had a boom. And so whenever Woody would break down in his biodiesel bus on the road somewhere, he'd hand his cell phone to his assistant, and Josh would get a call, and he would walk them through how to clear out the fuel filter or whatever it was that was going on. And so we've been able to wrangle, if those phone calls paid off down the road, because, you know, he owed Josh, you know, from saving him on the side of the road a time or two.
Smelly.
There's some cooking, some regenerative cooking happening in the kitchen right now.
Oh my God.
The nutrient dense smells coming from the kitchen.
Thank God for children. Well, listen, you know, we've done a lot of Zoom calls over the years, and I got to say this one is up there at the top. You with your children, it's just perfect. So anyway, thank you so much. We'll stay in touch, of course, and, you know, reach out to the Soil for Climate community if you want to just look for people to sort of test run some of your products or teaching ideas on, or if
we'll share some different cuts with you guys. We'd love to share that with you. We're so happy to be a part of this community.
Yeah, and you know, it's you know, it's all over the world. It's pretty diverse, and not everyone agrees on everything, obviously. And you know,
oh, we haven't noticed.
you haven't noticed. We're just trying to figure it out, you know. We're all just trying to figure this out together. And your film, that's what I love about it. Again, the music. Oh, you know, just that song in particular, the one at the very end of the trailer, that really upbeat song.
Mm-hmm.
Who is that? What's the story about that?
Gosh, you know, I wish I had I have great stories about so many of the songs in the movie. But that one was just a great song that we found on a stock site. It was if you needed a great song for a trailer, it was like $2,500. I highly
it was worth it. That's all I gotta say. All right, well, listen, again, let's wrap up.
That's good for a trailer. Let me tell you, when you're in the environmental documentary film business, you learn how to find good deals for things, and that song is a great deal. I totally agree.
All right. Well, I hope that person is getting the royalties they deserve. Okay.
Yeah, I'll look it up and give them the proper credit.
Okay.
You know what? Thank you for. I need to learn. I need to have an answer for that question, so I will find out who sang that awesome song that's in the trailer.
Yeah. There you go. All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much, and goodbye to you and your family, and we'll be in touch again soon, I guess.
Awesome.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.